and all you need is Chad Dinominisis to come out and say, yeah, you're totally wrong. Like, and sort of just kind of go against what the analytics and what the numbers clearly state, and kind of sit there and pound his chest as being a guy that, hey, I'm the hockey guy. I know what I'm doing. I don't need the numbers to tell the story. So, I think I like the move from a strategic standpoint, from an organizational standpoint, and very clearly the players have taken to him. I think it would have been telling if Jeff Skinner decided to sign elsewhere for, $8 to $9 million after he had the ability to speak with Ralph Kruger. I don't want to say that Ralph Kruger was the reason that they ended up signing, but I certainly don't think it hurt.
Right, and we're on the Thomas Take Sports podcast, folks. I did have a little bit of a technical issue when you were talking there. It didn't really give me feedback for a minute, but we were just discussing the Sabres. The fact that they just signed Jeff Skinner to an 8-year, $72 million extension. I think it makes me happy. I think it makes Nate happy, and we were also discussing the transition from the hopeless tenure that was Phil Housley's coaching career with the Buffalo Sabres, and now in transition to the new hire with Ralph Kruger. One dynamic, Nate, that you kind of touched on is the fact that Phil Housley just completely ignored any analytics and was very dry, and his tone was just so bland that it kind of rubbed off on the team. One dynamic that I noticed, really, I see it as the shift between the Sabres being this possible playoff team, a team that could be in contention, to a team that just fell apart. There was a game, I believe it was in October or November, maybe even December. I believe it was December, where they were playing the Philadelphia Flyers at home, on home ice. I'm in attendance. I have seats maybe in the 100 section, and I see the Sabres coming out hot, really passing well, communicating well, getting shots on net, and really just putting the gas pedal to the floor on the Philadelphia Flyers. And when Philadelphia kind of pushed back and tried to start somewhat playing dirty or being gritty, and the Sabres kind of played gritty back, Phil Housley basically said, no, we're not playing that way. They ended up losing that game, I believe by the score of 6-2. Where Philadelphia scored like 4 or 5 unanswered goals. That was really the sign, and that's really what essentially started, in my opinion, right after that, was this horrible just downturn of a season where Phil Housley just completely wore out his welcome. There was also an interview with Rob Ray back in the day, and I'm sure you've seen it, where Phil Housley said something to the tune of, Rob Ray said something to the tune of that Phil Housley just doesn't work well with young players. How do you have a coach here that can't work with young players when that's all we have is young players?
Right.
So I'm excited for Ralph Kruger. I love the story that he showed up at certain Buffalo bars and was kind of in a disguise and laid low and tried to talk to some Buffalo sports fans to see what their take was on the current state of the team. And I'm excited, and it's tough because I've done a few podcasts on this topic, and I felt like the Sabres were trying to reel me in again. I'm falling for drinking the Kool-Aid, so to speak, and I don't really know if I want to yet because the Sabres have just let me down so many times. But I am drinking the Kool-Aid. I am excited, and it sounds like you are as well.
Yeah, I think the depth moves, I'm sort of waiting for them to have a similar, Bills-like offseason where they just remake their entire bottom 6, or even if it's just their bottom 3, if they could remake that fourth line, I think I'm about done with the Larson, Gergensons,
right,
whatever you want to call that. I thought Larson had an up year considering where he'd been prior. Having said that, you can definitely upgrade at the center position on your fourth line. They need a second line center. They don't need another. They re-signed the player, their big ticket, right? Now I think your objective this offseason is to get negotiations with Sam Reinhart about an extension. The Bridge contract was a mistake, looking back. And, they probably could have had Sam Reinhart for something like $6 million a year, and now they're going to be probably looking more at the $7 or $8 million a year for Sam Reinhart, I would think, right? I mean, at least close to that, considering the numbers that he was able to put up last year. And then you're talking about paying two wingers close to $9 million, plus you're starting, your number one center, $11 million, $10 million, and then, you've got Rasmus Dahlin who's going to be right around there. So you've got a lot of high-ticket players. Can they build the roster around them necessary to win? That's going to be the question.
I couldn't agree more. They have a lot of tough with all the young talent that they have. That's great, but it's also it comes to a point the business side of hockey takes over where you have to make these decisions is prioritize essentially which one of these young players are we going to keep. There's another guy by the name of Evan Rodriguez who filled that third, fourth line center role pretty well. Yep. And that's another guy that they'll have to decide, how worth it is he to the Buffalo Sabres. So plenty of great storylines as far as the Sabres go, and Jason Botterill has one heck of an offseason ahead of him to sift through this team and make some crucial decisions for the future. Shifting gears now. We're going to shift gears to the sport that I've taken up the last 2 years. I know you've been playing a lot longer than me. Maybe not. How long have you been playing golf?
I've been playing golf. I think my first set of clubs was like 10, 11-ish.
Oh, wow. Yeah, so you got a definite. I didn't start playing until about 2-3 years ago. So you have a head start.
Playing wise, I've really sort of gotten a certain love for the game over the past 2-3 years. 2 seasons ago, I didn't golf at all. I had a lot of back and neck issues stemming from just a lot of football injuries. I had a herniated disc that kind of forced me to stop playing altogether. And then I finally got back into it at the end of the season last year. And so far this year, I think I'm averaging about 3 to 4 rounds a week. So
wow.
I'm playing a lot now. And the sport in itself, what a great year to really be the level of interest that I am with Tiger winning the first Masters, winning the first major of the year.
Right. Now, I was actually just going to get your thoughts on that. When you were watching the Masters, prior to it really getting going, let's just say the first day, did you have a feeling that something was about to happen that was pretty special? Because I just had that feeling that Tiger was gonna make some magic on that tournament.
I kind of think that every tournament that Tiger's been in since his return from injury, I'm like, Is this the one? Is this the one? And my dad's not a very big Tiger fan. He thinks he's kind of a D-bag, whatever. But, Tiger is the one guy in sports that's so polarizing. It doesn't matter how good the Masters could have been. If there was a 3-way tie that went into extra holes, that went 5 extra holes, and a hole-in-one won it, I don't think they would have had as good of ratings as they did with Tiger Woods coming up on that final Sunday on the back 9. Just the attention that the world was paying Tiger Woods and, Francesco Molinari, who just didn't seem like he could miss,
right.
No matter what he did. And Tiger just has this ability to captivate the sports world and get them stopped on everything else that's happening in their personal and other sports lives and just watch golf for a couple of hours. And, the game of golf is maybe the healthiest it's ever been in terms of competition. I think going into this weekend's tournament, you're looking at Rory McIlroy, who came off of shooting he shoot a 60 or a 59 in his final round last week.
Yeah. He's driving the ball well again.
Right. And you think about some of the other top players in the world. There hasn't been this much talent at the top of the world. The Justin Thomases, the Dustin Johnsons, obviously the Jordan Spieth, who's really taken a kind of a step back since his early dominance.
Right.
The Ricky Fowlers, who still have yet to win a major major. We're sort of waiting on the Ricky Fowlers of the world.
He's knocked on the door. He has. He's come close. Yeah.
And shame on me for not bringing up Brooks Koepka in those and the group of players I just mentioned, who arguably right now is one of the best, if not the best player in the world. And then Justin Rose, a guy who's been basically the number one player ranking in the world for the past 2 seasons. I could keep going. And that just tells you about the state of golf. I mean, when Tiger's winning these majors early in his career, he's going up against the guys like Angel Cabrera and Chris DeMarco, guys that just, historically are not top flight golfers, guys that are just sort of in the middle of the pack. And now, his win in the Masters was one of the most remarkable sports moments that I remember that may have ever happened in my lifetime, and then dating back, simply because of what Tiger had to go through, his age, the limitations on his swing and his body, to go up against all those guys I just mentioned and come out on top. One of the greatest sports feats that'll ever happen in my lifetime, I'm sure of it.
I definitely agree. It was one of the most amazing, captivating victories in any sport that I've ever seen, and I got to watch pretty much all of it, which was really cool. You mentioned Brooks Koepka, a guy that I see as probably the present and the future of golf. He might be that next Tiger Woods as far as a guy that can really captivate and bring attention to the game. He's somebody that has won the last 2 U.S. Opens, and there's as always in golf, there's always history on the line. There's always a narrative heading into any tournament, and with this tournament, Brooks Koepka could be only the second golfer ever to win 3 straight U.S. Opens. If he does win this U.S. Open, he'd be the second since 1903 to 1905. Willie Anderson is the only guy to win 3 U.S. Opens in a row, and he won the first U.S. Open back in 1901. How about that?
That's some stats, bro. That's pretty crazy.
Right. I mean, as far as Brooks Koepka, he's somebody that I didn't really pick up on until probably about 2-3 years ago. He kind of just burst onto the scene. As far as him being that next Tiger Woods, do you think that he's already there, or do you think there's more? Obviously, there's more room to grow in terms of career accomplishments, but do you think he's already there from like a marketing standpoint?
That's a good question. I don't know about a marketing standpoint. He's kind of a hateable winner,
right?
Which I think golf needs, right? Like, they kind of need a villain, and Brooks Koepka's that guy for whatever reason. And he burst onto the scene as late as he did. He's 29 years old. He's not necessarily super young in terms of when Jordan Spieth came on the scene, but Koepka, endured an injury to his wrist that he thought he may never golf again. Right. So considering that point and where he is now, I think he has a bright future playing into his 30s. We'll see. In terms of majors, I mean, he's got to complete the Grand Slam before he can even really be in the same conversation as Tiger. But, I mean, he wins 3 U.S. Opens. Now you're talking about, like, you're almost on Rafael Nadal level of the French Open, where Rafael Nadal is, 12 freaking French Open titles. You dominate a tournament like that, and arguably the most difficult tournament of the year, the most difficult major in the U.S. Open. The rules and the USG governing rules and the courses, just how hard the USGA and really takes the seriousness of which it takes wanting those golf courses to be at a level of almost unplayable to the common person. They want their scores at 2 under, at 1 over. You go back to Shinnecock last year in Wisconsin. I mean, that was just, it was at times wasn't even fun to watch because guys were just over par. I mean, you don't see that. I mean, it makes a guy like me who shoots over par feel pretty good. But considering that they were shooting in the mid 70s, and I only can assume what I'd be scoring at a golf course like that. But I really do think that if Ricky Fowler can finally get a major under his belt, that might start sort of a domino effect for him. I think he's got the goods.
Right.
To be that type of player. And I do still think that Tiger potentially has another major in his belt. I'd love to see it. I'd love to see him play well in this U.S. Open. He didn't really prep a lot for the PGA Championship. He only played the course the day prior. He really wasn't prepared for that course, but I think he'll be more prepared for the U.S. Open this year. He's played and won at Pebble Beach how many times, so he doesn't need to practice for Pebble Beach. He's played that course in his sleep, I'm sure, many, many a time. So the future of golf is bright, maybe brighter than it's been in some time, and I'm all here for it.
I couldn't agree more. My last question for you, Nate, before I give you the send-off. Will the Buffalo Bills make the playoffs in 2019?
Man, what question. What a loaded question.
What does it depend on to you? That's the better question. What
the AFC, man.
Right.
The AFC is maybe the best it's been I don't know, in a long time. The NFC has been sort of the deepest conference really over the past decade, and now you look at the AFC West with Oakland and the moves they've made this offseason. Is Derek Carr going to help them get to the level they were before his injury? The Broncos, is Joe Flacco going to be good enough to make the rest of that team, which we know they have a good defense. We know they've got playmakers. They've got Phillip Lindsay, which is one of the best young running backs in football. And then outside of that, you've got maybe the Los Angeles Chargers, which I think most people consider to be the best team in football.
Right.
And then, it just kind of goes to show you that the West right now is one of the deepest divisions in football. And then you look into the AFC North now with the Browns resurgence. The Pittsburgh Steelers are going to be right there. The Ravens, a lot of people like the Ravens' potential in that. And then you look at the AFC South, which is in recent memory been the worst division in football. You can make the argument it's the best one in football now.
Right.
With the Texans and the Colts, who I think are two of the best teams in the AFC. And then the Jaguars, are they with Nick Foles primed for a step back into the limelight after a really poor season last year, but an AFC Championship, appearance the year prior? So, the Tennessee Titans, I'm not much of a believer in Marcus Mariota and Brian Tannehill, so I don't really see much from them. And then obviously, the Patriots are the Patriots, and the Jets, that's their main competition. So I just named a whole bunch of teams right there.
Right.
So I think if they can get to 10 wins, that they likely secure a wild card position. I think this team, as long as, and here's the thing, I shouldn't even say this, because they've prepared their roster to sustain injuries.
Right.
Many of the other teams in the AFC, if your top 3 or 4 players go down, they're going to have trouble winning football games. The Bills have the second easiest schedule in football. I think that's going to help. Man, this is kind of a long answer.
No, I asked you this question.
Yes.
You think you'll go yes? I asked you this question because that is exactly my point. The whole NFC and AFC dynamic, I think, is in a shift. That we're in a huge shift where a lot of these AFC teams that were laughing stocks, Buffalo, Cleveland, the Jets, the Raiders, they've much improved. And then you have teams that have been good these last few years, like the Steelers, with players that come out of nowhere, guys that it seems like Pittsburgh can't go wrong in the NFL draft. Each year they have a phenomenal draft, so it's going to be fun. I would say yes too. With 10 wins, I would agree with you that they can make it for sure.
Yeah, and I think the North Division is one of those that you look at, and I'm missing a team from the West: Denver, LA,
Kansas City.
Yep. Cripes. I forgot about Kansas.
Yeah, right.
So there you go. There's another team to add. So the West has 3 teams, the South has 3 teams, and the North has 3 teams. That's a lot of teams. So,
right.
Honestly, too, I think a lot of people, especially Jets fans, will tell you that the Jets are the second best team in the East. I just don't see it. They have no depth. The top end of their they remind me more of the 2015 Bills than any team I can remember. Such a top-heavy, talented roster, but zero depth and zero abilities to, withstand injury. So the Jets have Adam Gase, and that's really all I got to say about the Jets.
Yeah, Yeah, we can just leave that there. We'll let the Jets fans, the New Jersey Jets fans, as I always refer to them.
We'll let them, rip each other apart, trying to defend a guy that they were ready to kill at the beginning of this offseason. So,
right. Well, thank you, Nate, so much for joining me. Everybody, you can follow Nate. Give him the Twitter. It's at Nate Geary _WGR. Is that right?
Just WGR.
Just WGR. Okay, so at Nate Geary WGR. Give him a follow. The guy's got, how many followers he got? Like 10,000?
Something
like that?
For it. I think I'm at like 8,500, so I'm pushing for that 10K.
So you're a good follow. That's what that means.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it, and it was a joy coming on. I'm glad I finally got to come on, and again, thankfully, I'm the dessert menu after Lorenzo Alexander. So thanks again, my friend, and I'd be happy to come on anytime.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Nate. Take care.
You as well, my friend.
That was Nate Geary of WGR Sports Radio 550 and Cover One. He does a lot of analytical stuff for Cover One where he kind of dives into the X's and O's of football, and we just talked about a lot of stuff. We talked about the Bills. We talked about the Sabres. We discussed the sport of golf. We discussed the Bills roster, position battles, a lot of fun stuff there to talk about with Nate Geary, and I really wanted to have him on. I've been wanting to have him on for quite some time. He's somebody that I followed for quite a long time since he started really at WGR, and we're around the same age, so the ones that are around the same age, we got to stick together. We got to look out for one another. That's how I see it. Next week on the show, I will be joined by another Buffalo Bill, another member of the Buffalo Bills, long snapper Reed Ferguson. Reed Ferguson has spent the last 3 going into his 4th season with the Buffalo Bills, and he wanted to hop on the show and give his take on where the Bills are headed. What are his observations of the 2019 Buffalo Bills? Where does he see this team headed? What direction does he see this team headed in? And obviously it'll be all positive, but I want to talk to Reed and really learn about his football career dating back to his days at LSU, being a teammate of Tre'Davious White, and much, much more. So you guys can tune into that on the Thomas Take Sports Podcast Spotify channel. You download Spotify, type in Thomas Take Sports Podcast, click follow. You'll get instant access to any episodes that are recorded. Nate Geary, Lorenzo Alexander, Reed Ferguson, and as I continue to have more guests on the show on Wednesdays, I will continue to bring you great guests and deliver great shows. I'm Ryan Thomas. It was the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. You can check this out on YouTube as well. Spotify, it will be sectioned in separate parts due to the change in subject matter from me talking to Nate about the Bills to talking to Nate about the Sabres to talking to Nate about the sport of golf. Everything. Tune in. Enjoy it. Thanks for listening live, and thanks for tuning in on demand on Spotify, Spreaker, and YouTube. Take care.